Okay, hey everybody, thanks for joining now or watching later. We're happy to have you on this little training education achievement training that Dr. Brenda Lloyd-Jones is doing for us. So if you don't know me, I'm Chandler. I'm a provisional member, and I was supposed to help out with the April T training, so I'm really glad that we get to do this in a different format. So Dr. Brenda Lloyd-Jones, so I have to look at my notes because she's very distinguished and has a lot of highlights about her, is a associate professor in the Department of Human Relations at the University of Oklahoma in Tulsa, where she focuses her research on leadership and women. So that's perfect for the Junior League and our mission. And she is going to present today on knowledge and suggestions and empowering tips on how to make a difference that matters in this pandemic. I know we're all used to volunteering with our time and with our presence, but that just has to look a little bit different in these times. So thank you, Dr. Brenda Lloyd-Jones, for helping us out and for putting this together for us so we can learn how to further Junior League's mission, during the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Chandler, and a special thanks to Chandler Moxley, who so fabulously helped to put together this particular training, and she was certainly upbeat as well as very positive as we brought this together. I would like to give special thanks to the following Junior League of Tulsa volunteers who helped to make this training possible. First and foremost, Jennifer Porter, who is the best president ever. She's doing a remarkable job despite the current pandemic. I'd also like to thank Lori O'Sullivan, who is the Leadership Development Council Vice President. And I would be remiss if I did not mention Lauren Corbett. She is the Communications Council Vice President and was very helpful in terms of putting us through the logistics of getting this done and recorded via Zoom today. So these are all Junior League of Tulsa volunteers who give lavishly of their time. And today's training did not happen magically. No, it didn't, but it came only to fruition with the time and expertise of our community volunteers here at Junior League. So please help me applaud them with finger snaps, if you will. Thank you so very much. So as we talk about community volunteers and social distance or social distancing, the question is how to make a difference that matters in a pandemic. And I'd like to share with you our 4 learning objectives for our time together today. So after this session, you will be able to do the following. Define volunteering and the qualities of community volunteers. 2, explain how the pandemic has changed the way we volunteer. Number 3, recognize the importance of being knowledgeable and resourceful as community volunteers. And finally, identify ways to make an impactful difference through volunteering during the COVID-19 outbreak. Those are our learning objectives for today. So I want to start by defining volunteer. I used this definition in my own writing and publishing, and I have found it to be very substantial in describing what a volunteer does. And I've unpacked it into 4 components, and I'm sure you will find yourself in this definition. So to volunteer is to choose to act in recognition of a need. And I'll pause here because the Junior League of Tulsa performs a community needs assessment. We get information and feedback on what it is that our community needs. So to volunteer is to choose to act in recognition of a need with an attitude of social responsibility. And it is this disposition that community volunteers at Junior League has. We have this disposition of making the world, or not only the world, but really we make our community better. We're not satisfied with our own betterment or our own advancement and promotion. We are also interested in the betterment of those within our community. Again, to volunteer is to choose to act in recognition of a need with an attitude of social responsibility and without concern for monetary profit. We don't get paid for doing this. We don't get paid, that is, money. We certainly get paid in terms of intrinsic value about it. And then finally, to volunteer is to choose to act in recognition of a need with an attitude of social responsibility without concern for monetary profit, going beyond one's basic obligation. Yes, we could be satisfied with just me, myself, and I, and those within my circle, but we're not. As community volunteers, we are concerned about others and their well-being. And this definition is by Ellis and Noyes. So let's move on to community volunteering and social distancing. Volunteering as we know it has changed, particularly for those of us who were accustomed to being up close and personal with those with whom we worked. I have divided this time into two components, pre-COVID-19 and current COVID-19. Pre-COVID-19, you see the illustration I have here where everybody's touching and agreeing. The song that comes to mind that characterizes the way we volunteered and interacted pre-COVID-19 is a song by Diana Ross and the Supremes, an iconic group back in the 70s. Their song was "Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand. Make this world a better place if you can." That's the essence of volunteering and interacting with others pre-COVID-19. Current COVID-19 can be characterized by the song made popular by the iconic group Police, "Don't Stand So Close to Me." That is in essence certainly how we interact today. We're watching those who are not following these new codes of conduct, and we are giving them the side eye if they get too close to us. And I wrote a piece that I hope will be published soon. And I want to just read a section of it because I think I've captured this change, this shift, this transition in the way that we interact interpersonally with those with whom we work, as well as in the ways that we volunteer today. So according to the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the coronavirus disease can be easily spread through skin-to-skin touching. Therefore, as a society, we are avoiding non-essential up-close and personal contact with other people. Here are a few ways we have modified and curtailed interpersonal physical contact. 1, rather than shaking hands to communicate hello or goodbye, we wave or give a head nod at a distance of at least 6 feet. 2, instead of engaging in a fist bump or a high five to indicate agreement or excitement, we give a thumbs up, leaving a minimum of 6 feet between us. 3, a pat on the back to convey approval of a job well done has been replaced with an affirming smile, seen at a distance of 6 feet. An embrace or a hug to convey comfort or support is off limits now. So an understanding facial expression is a good substitute at a distance of 72 inches. I got you there. These are instances of past terms of engagement or codes of conduct. And they have appropriately changed to establish safety measures. So in reality, many of us have shifted from impersonal interaction to online communication using digital technologies. That's where we are today. How can we do this better as volunteers many of us have moved from in-person to online. So one way we can be effective volunteers is to be knowledgeable. Many of the individuals and groups with whom we volunteer, they look up to us and they expect us to be knowledgeable about today's events, today's issues. And one basic way to do that is by understanding basic terminology. And I've included a few of the terms that have become popular during this pandemic. The first one is COVID-19. It's an acronym for Coronavirus Disease of 2019. So COVID-19, really letters and numbers of the coronavirus disease of 2019. We've taken the CO from corona, the VI from virus, the D from disease, and the 19 from 2019. That may be useful for explaining to individuals who may be wondering, well, what in the world does COVID-19 mean? The next one is infectious disease, and this means a disease that can be transferred or spread from one person to another. And then, of course, we hear almost every day the word pandemic, and this means the global or worldwide outbreak of a disease. Again, being knowledgeable is a great way to be an effective volunteer in today's unfamiliar time. So here are some other words that the Centers for Disease and Prevention Control, also known as CDC, have defined for us. Social distancing. This happens when people deliberately increase the physical space between themselves and others to avoid spreading a communicable disease. Today, that space is 6 feet between us. Quarantine, this is a popular term that's used often by just individuals in passing or talking with them, or certainly communicating via the phone. This happens when a person is not currently sick, but has been or may have been exposed to a transmitted disease and separates from others. This practice can help stop the spread of the disease. Now, quarantine is different from isolation. Isolation happens when a person is infected with a transmitted disease and is separated from people who are healthy. This too can help stop the spread of the disease, or flatten the curve is another term of stopping, halting, decreasing the spread of the disease. So social distancing, quarantine, isolation are terms that can help us communicate to others what's going on. It's also important that we are resourceful. This is a time where doing things as usual may not work, and often does not when we're talking about face-to-face interaction with people with whom we volunteer. So I want to present some inspiring action and practices that Junior League of Tulsa, as well as other junior leagues, are doing to make sure that their volunteerism does not stop in the face of COVID-19. So here we have Junior League of Tulsa provided personal items and gift cards to participants at Resonance, a community partner that helps women change their lives for the better. The Junior League of Abilene provided school supplies to students to encourage home learning. And then the Junior League of Midland used annual conference funds to supply students with Wi-Fi, enabling 200 additional students to have access to internet. I want to pause here because this is critical when we talk about, some literatures call it the digital divide. That means that some people have access to the internet and other people do not. For various reasons. It may be because they live in a geographical location that does not access the internet, or it may be that there may be some financial concerns and that the added expense is not appropriate at this time for that particular family. So we want to be cognizant of the fact that some people don't have access to the internet, and consequently inequalities are happening there. These are ways that volunteers can think about, or this is an area that volunteers can think about and consider how they might address this issue. And finally, Junior League of Dayton launched a series of storytime videos on YouTube, both in English and Spanish, for children to listen to at home. So these particular practices and acts of volunteering inspired me, and I trust they inspire you, because although we tend to volunteer as an organization, we can also take what we've learned from Junior League, the skills and the knowledge, and apply it on an individual basis, contingent on what's going on at home for us. So here are some suggestions to help isolated older people and others who are in high-risk categories. And this may be individuals who are physically disabled, or in some literatures, this is called differently abled. And how can we help these particular individuals who may need our help? One way to do that is send a care package. According to CDC, we want to purchase and get the type of foods that would last for a couple of weeks so that we can shelter at home. And this can include canned fruits and vegetables, as well as soups. We want to maybe include in that care package toilet tissue and disinfectant wipes. We can leave it on the front porch. We don't want to forget to call the individual to let them know that we left it there for them. Also, we might consider the option of ordering online from a vendor that ships, and that's another way of providing and sending a care package. What research shows is that interaction, even this type of interaction, decreases feelings of isolation and depression. And that's what we're finding, that many individuals are becoming very sad and feeling a sense of alienation. And so we want to arrest and disrupt those kinds of feelings in ways that are appropriate and in ways that we can as volunteers. Another way to maybe disrupt this sense of isolation is to schedule a weekly call. If you have an older person in your neighborhood, for example, or even relatives who may live elsewhere, call them weekly. Schedule a time that both of you are available, and that's something that you both can look forward to. We can use digital phones, but remember, not everyone has a digital phone, and so so encourage them to use their landline phone. It's quite all right. I like this one. Write notes and leave them on the porch for that individual, or you can mail them. These practices, I think, are good no matter the time or or the issue at hand. And then I don't want to dare stereotype older people, because many of them are techno savvy and they are very familiar with computer technology. And so connecting with them using video related apps, that's great, or using other digital devices. These are ways that we can certainly disrupt the sense of isolation and alienation that some people are feeling. So as I conclude, I want us to continue volunteering during the pandemic by sharing knowledge and becoming knowledgeable about the issue at hand, and then being resourceful, giving you ideas of how other organizations are using their expertise and time during this pandemic, as well as ways that we can do things on an individual basis. One of my students, graduate students, she shared with me that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, she has been sort of babysitting for a relative who is in another state by interacting with her children as her relative fixes dinner. And so her relative gets a time away from the children. The children are excited to see their aunt in this instance, and they read to her. She said they tell her stories, they tell her jokes. It's just a fun time, and she's developing a stronger bond with them. So I certainly welcome any ideas as well as practices in which you're engaged in. We do have a chat feature via Zoom, and you can input your comments as well as your questions within the chat feature. I'm happy to respond to them. I had a wonderful experience a couple of weeks ago, and this was about innovation and being creative. I never write poems. I don't think I've ever shared a poem, certainly not publicly, but I wrote a poem and I want to share it with you. I'd like to read it. It's regarding COVID-19. I don't have a title for it, so please, as I read it, help me think of a befitting title. Kindly remember to leave ample space, 6 feet apart. In COVID-19's case, it's strongly recommended to shelter in place. Home sweet home is our saving grace. Human interaction has quickly transitioned, requiring new behaviors and odd restrictions. Practice the current rules of engagement and become tomorrow's super change agent. So as we conclude my part of this presentation, I invite you to reach out to me. Here's my email as well as my website. You can certainly find me on Twitter. And if there's anything that you'd like to talk about or anything that I can help you process, I'm happy to do it. Let's take a look to see if we have any questions, Chandler.
It doesn't look like anyone has any questions, although everybody is giving you well-deserved kudos for your poem. So.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone have a suggestion regarding a title?
Be a Corin Queen.
Yes.
Brenda, I did have something I've been thinking about, now during this presentation and previously, but I know sometimes to be a good volunteer and just like to be a good person, you also have to take care of yourself. So what are your recommendations for, giving yourself grace during this time?
Absolutely. And it goes without saying that community volunteers must practice care. And as I read in the definition, volunteers are going beyond the basic obligation and their basic obligations. And it is critical, particularly now, that we realize that we are not engaging in volunteering the way that we once did, and we have additional responsibilities as well. And so taking time away from the self-talk in our heads that tells us that we should be doing more, that we could be doing more. We need to disrupt that and tell ourselves we are doing what we can, and that is enough. Yes, I think it's important that we practice good nutrition, get in exercise when we can, certainly interact with people who build us up and tell us how well we are doing. I think I shared with you before this presentation started that interacting with my own students, I get to hear about what's going on in their lives, and the children that have come home from school and they're working at home, and the interactions that are strained sometimes because there's not enough room, there's not enough quiet, and also sometimes there's bad news. And there are times when I don't have the words to provide the comfort that I think would be needed. And I close out the day and I go check the mail, and there's a card for me. There's a card that says, "You are fantastic. You are doing great." And this has come from someone that I didn't expect to get it from, but nonetheless, it has lifted my spirit. It has let me know that it's okay for me to work at the speed that I am right now, at the intensity that I am right now, and that I am doing a good job. I recommend that we do this for other people. And you shared too your ways of sending cards or leaving things on the porch. So I think, yes, I like your way of putting it, Chandler. Letting ourselves off the hook is a very good idea.
Perfect. Christina asked, do you think that organizations like Junior League will be even more vital for the community with the economic downturn caused by COVID-19? And then, with that, will there be an even bigger need for volunteer organizations?
I absolutely think so. And I know so now because I look at different outlets in terms of what's needed, and volunteers are needed in terms of helping, for example, the education system, teachers who may not be as familiar with online teaching. And so volunteers who are experts, if you will, at computer technology, they are helping them get through their classes. They are signing on and providing tutorials in math and English, for example. I think on a larger scale, we have people who are without jobs and will need training as well as education. They will need people to listen to them and to serve as support systems. And so, yes, I think volunteers are even needed now and will be needed more so in the future. So organizations like Junior League of Tulsa that focus on training volunteers and placing volunteers in the community where they can be of assistance. This is the type of organization that we want to stay connected to, and certainly advance to other people, or let other people know about this opportunity.
Thanks. So Allie says, I'm not part of Junior League, but you're welcome here. So welcome to our little chat. Do you have suggestions of ways, let's see, do you have suggestions of what ways could I find a way to volunteer and for who? So just, do you know people outside of League who need volunteers right now, and what would that look like?
Yes, you know, I Googled when I was working on this presentation, volunteer opportunities, and quite a few things came up. And I'm sure if one was to, or if you decided to define your geographical location to Tulsa, for example, that would come up. There are volunteer resource centers where you could call in and certainly ask how you could help or how your skill set might be of use. I think we have food, we have issues with food deserts and food insecurities, and finding ways to work with these kinds of organizations would be a great idea as well. So I would suggest just doing a little research, and you will find ample amounts of opportunities to volunteer. You may want to consider becoming a member of Junior League. AJLI is one of my students, so she would be an asset.
Thank you. Yeah, I was definitely going to shameless plug the league and say, come
please do, Chandler. Add on to what I've said.
Yeah, it's a great time with great opportunities. So feel free to come on. And then Jackie asked for volunteers who have family members who need to be protected with continued social distancing while COVID-19 circulates the community before a vaccine becomes available. Should there be new virtual volunteer opportunities created, and how do you see these opportunities being formatted?
Yes, and I do see that there will be opportunities because, as we mentioned, Chandler, that people mention that they want to get back to normal, but maybe what we will be getting back to is a new reality. And that new reality may suggest that we volunteer differently. Those of us who are used to direct volunteerism in the trenches. There's always been those who have volunteered via the internet because there has been a need for that. For example, organizations ask others to take on, for example, ways to connect with their clients and serve as a listening ear, serve as a person to disrupt isolation and alienation. So the ways in which that we will begin volunteering, I think, will be diverse, and thinking of what's needed. Tutors, for example, how can we think about food and getting food to those who need food? So yes, I think we will need a think tank of sorts to begin looking at different ways to make accessible our skill sets and knowledge that we have.
Well, the last question I saw in here was, can we get a copy of that poem? So if you want to pass that along to us, we could post it with the recording and then everybody could enjoy it, but that's, up to you. So.
Well, thank you. That certainly lifted my spirits even higher. This has been a joy to provide this training and to give some insights and get some insights as to how we're feeling. And it sounds like our pulse is still strong. Our passion remains high for volunteering in the community with Junior League of Tulsa.
Well, thank you, Brenda. I and everybody else really appreciate you taking your time to do this for us. And, it's such a treat to connect with everybody this afternoon and to hear what you have to say about volunteering in our new age. So if nobody else has any questions, I think that will wrap it up, and we can all snaps for Brenda for doing this for us. So thank you.
Thank you.